All right. Looks like I hopefully am doing this correctly and am live. I'm actually going to check real quick via my phone for anyone that is joining to make sure that it's actually live, because it's been a minute since I used LinkedIn Live. So hopefully I haven't gotten rusty in terms of how I've done it. And if you are here, feel free to drop a quick little comment, chat, something, just so I know where you're dialing in from. So as I'm just double checking all my stuff to make sure this is working correctly. And it appears, yeah, it is. So I am live. All right. First step done. I did it correctly. I went live. Been about a year since I've done one of these. They're fun. Honestly, before we kind of jump into everything, I realized that LinkedIn Lives are, one, fun. I think they're, two, can be really informative, and three, just another way to reach my audience. As I post LinkedIn content every day, I'm also recently launched a YouTube video, which I actually will record today's video and ultimately put it up on my channel too. So if you're here live and you got to jump, or you just weren't able to catch it in general, you can go and watch a replay on LinkedIn. So I guess that's kind of it. So let's, for the sake of time, let's really jump into it to discuss building your first skill within Claude. And if you'd signed up early via the registration link I'd put about a week ago now at this point, you would know to come to today's talk with your candidate submission packages. That was kind of a big thing, because I want to show how you can create a skill using that. I've helped actually a couple of my coaching clients do that over the last couple of weeks. It's been really, really helpful for them from a time-saving perspective. Every week, hopefully, you're sending out multiple submittals. And if you've got a certain style in terms of how you present that information, from a Word doc to the email itself to even how you present the candidate package, I think a Claude skill, aka an agent, is a great place to start to ultimately win back some of your time. Because if you do build this correctly, which we're going to do today, you'll be able to, moving forward, essentially delegate that responsibility to Claude to handle, and allows you to get back to focusing on the ABCs of recruiting, right? The always be conversing part of things. And so what I'm hoping to walk through today for you is specifically how you can create your first skill and use it from this point forward. Now, I will be very transparent when it comes to creating skills in general. There is a bit of a learning curve. The stuff I'm going to show today, it's going to hopefully seem pretty straightforward, because it somewhat is. But with AI, with the release of the new models, what I found over the last 6 months now working within Cowork, there's always some hiccups along the way. And so over time, you may or may not have to go back into the skill itself and make some adjustments. I had a client earlier this week where the thing was just the outputs weren't correct in terms of what we would expect. And so essentially we have to look under the hood and figure out, where is Claude, or if you're using ChatGPT, or really any LLM for that matter, where's it going wrong? And once we were able to figure that out, we were able to make some adjustments and then get get the AI's outputs correct for her and her business, to ensure that she didn't have to keep reworking stuff over and over again. So I'm going to share my screen here and kind of jump into it. So we'll do this, share my screen. We're literally going to walk through step-by-step kind of how to do this. Oh, no, that's a different one. That's not actually the right one I wanted to share. Give me 1 second. I want to share a different one. That was Claude via my desktop. I want to share actually the app that is on my computer. So if you signed up early, I did recommend having Cowork, because that's where you can go in and create skills. So I'm going to kind of talk through the skills, what a skill is, what Cowork is, how I use it, and kind of my interpretation. Now, is it 100% accurate? I don't know. This is the way I learned it. I have told this multiple times. I'm not a software engineer. I'm a sales guy. I'm a coach. And I just kind of got my hands dirty when it came to using this tool. Because when it came out on, I believe it was January 12th, I think I looked this up recently, it was 12th or 13th. When this came out, I thought to myself, this seems like a big leap forward for AI. And it felt worth the time investment to figure out how to use this on a day-to-day basis to win back some of my time. because the more time I can delegate some of the behind the scenes administrative stuff to Claude, the more time I can get back to having conversations with people. And that ultimately is how you drive revenue. And so what we're going to talk about is what is skills, which if you have, again, I'll go back real quick. If you have Cowork, it'll be on your left-hand side. You'll see all of these. So when you go to customize, you're going to see my screen here in a second. There's a lot of skills on here that I've created over the last few months. And the thing that I want you to take away from today is you're going to create your first one, just one. And how I look at skills is they're agents that actually do something. And as you look here, like if you're looking through each one of these, I'll do a comp research one, for example, because that's something I worked on back in April, because it was something that kept coming up on calls. So I said, hey, let's help me create a skill to try to do that stuff. And this is like ultimately a high level overview. And we're going to create this today. Like this is what a skill is. It's basically telling AI how to go about and execute on a task. And one of the reasons why I like Cowork so much is its ability to interact with other tools. That's what they call connectors, which I'm going to jump back here real quick. This would be the connectors. So it can connect to potentially your CRM, depending on what it is. It can connect to Notion, for example, if you use there, Asana. There's a multitude of tools that directly connect into Claude Cowork. And so I can go into Claude and say, hey, for example, I use HubSpot. I say, hey, I want you to pull up everyone I've had contact with over the last week. It can then go into HubSpot because it's connected to it, pull that data out, and then present it back to me. Versus, say, the chat side, or at least how I viewed and have been using chat, it's more for bouncing ideas or maybe just doing some quick data research. But if I want actual actionable things to be either be created or researched, or in this case with the skill, the agents being created, I use Cowork. So I use that all the time. And what we're going to do, and I'll pull up a doc here in a second, we're going to start with, and this is how I literally, that's how I create these things. I just started messing around with Claude, and it started with creating prompts, then I created projects, then we got into Cowork and we created these agents. And so I'm going to drop here in a minute into Claude a specific prompt that I created with the help of Claude, mind you, to then help create the skill. And we're going to drop it into here. I will share this with you afterwards. Actually, the best way would be send me a DM, actually, because I don't think I can drop this large thing into the LinkedIn side of stuff. So if you're watching this, or if you do watch the replay, send me a LinkedIn DM and just say, hey, can you send over that skill creation prompt? So this is going to, I just dropped it in. There's a bunch of placeholders in there. So it's going to ask me some key details that I need, or that, it needs in order to create that skill. And so again, if you brought with your candidate information, you would then be able to click this skill. You'll be able to use the candidate submission skill. And actually, you know what? Let's try it. We'll do this real quick. Yeah, LinkedIn won't let me post. I can't post comments on LinkedIn, which is actually unfortunate. That's a little bit of an oversight on my part, because I know I said, hey, come prepared with these things. I thought I could be able to just drop it into the chat. Like I said, it's been about a year since I used StreamYard. Used to be able to do that. I'm not seeing it here, which is very, very unfortunate. I wish that was the case, but unfortunately not. So we're going to just walk through an example. If you didn't bring submission, or if you didn't have canned submissions, we can then just type some things in. So what do you recruit and who are your clients? So I will say, do you have 3-to-1s? I don't have any, unfortunately. And I want the output to be an email ready plain text. Actually, we'll do both today, just so you can see the examples here. And so this asks me a few questions again. It just reprompts itself to try to get this closer to what we actually want. So I'm going to say, I recruit 4 recruiters who are focused on sales within the recruitment industry. And I have a real already pre-built skill around this, but I just wanted to walk through the step-by-step process you can do to going about doing this yourself. So that way you can create this skill that is specific to you and your business. So obviously, if you do something different, maybe you do accounting and finance professionals for manufacturing firms on the West Coast. So you could do something like that, add it in there. It would ultimately be different. Claude will then, as you can see here, ask you a few more questions. So I would say my submissions will go to the firm owners. And then it will give you, this is where actually having the having your own style and having your own canned submission package, I think, is really helpful, because I've run this prompt a few different times. And section 2, that second part where it says, hey, what sections do you want? You might be like, I don't like some of these things. And if you feed it some information of how you're already doing things, it will be able to bypass this step and ultimately mirror how you're already doing things and replicate that moving forward. Because again, I don't have that right now. I just want to show you the simple chat with it walkthrough feature. I'm going to say we can keep all sections but part. The second piece too, in addition to showing Claude the format of how you do submissions, it can be really helpful when it comes to the tone. It'll essentially read how you write and ultimately try to mirror that as well. For this one, I'll say direct and peer-to-peer. I will give you So this is kind of funny. I can't believe I have to actually say this from time to time, but I typically, when I get these like prompt questions, I will tell Claude, don't make anything up. It does, as they call it, like hallucinate. It does sometimes like to embellish things or add things that are just untrue. If you ever call it out, it's like, oh yeah, sorry, I thought this would be better. So I always like to add it in there. If it does ask me, hey, what do you never want? I say, do not make anything up. Like it saved me some headaches, let's just say, by putting that simple little thing in there as well. So we're going to hit enter. I'm going to see how this thing turns out in terms of the skill itself. Like hopefully it'll create something close to what we would like. And then from there, we'll be able to, this is the other thing too. So this is called a skill creator. As this thing's working, it's probably a good time to explain this. You know your skills are working when you talk to Cowork, and on the right-hand side, the skill itself pops up. So the skill creator you see here, it's part of Anthropathics marketplace of skills. So if you were to go to customize, as this thing's running, you can do this. You go to skills, you can add a skill, which you can create, which we're doing right now. You can also go into here and you can see this. There's some stuff already pre-built, made by Anthropathic or its partners. You can go in and find these things. I already added the skill creator into mine, so it's not in here. But for someone new, it should be sitting in here where you can then simply just click this button. It'll add it in there, and then it'll execute set activities based on the skill that's written. So like Canvas, or I guess Canva, like I've this. So this would be like a skill. If I liked it and I'd use a lot, I would then add that into, I'll just do it right now, just to show you an example. Hit install. I'm gonna go back real quick. Hopefully it should pop up here in a second. Is not yet, so maybe it's taking a second to get in there, but it should pop up. We'll come back here in a second once the we'll go back to here to see how this is coming along. So again, here though, just to quickly rehash this, when you are doing anything, so if you saw mine, I have like 30 different skills I've created. When I prompt Claude, meaning I talk to it and I say, hey, use, or I need to create a canned submission. And that's just another good thing for me to talk through as we're talking about this. So one of the things, and we'll see that with the final skill as well here. But for example, we're going to close all these just because I think it'll be distracting. So you can see up here, I want to talk through this, like how the skills can be triggered, meaning how do you tell Claude use this skill versus that? When you are creating the skills, one of the ways, and it's up here too, the triggers include make a graphic. Basically, you're telling, if I were to go into Claude and say, hey, make a graphic for LinkedIn, this phrase in particular, aka make a graphic, build an infographic, turn this into a visual, prompts Claude to go and find said skill and then execute upon it from there. How do you build this graphic? Like today, honestly, the LinkedIn Live graphic that I used today for this talk, was helped created by Claude. I created this graphic builder skill for myself because I'm starting to do more of this. And so I just went in and said, hey, I want to create this. So every time I say I want to make a graphic, and I told it the title, and went and ultimately created the picture you see for today's LinkedIn Live was created with the help of Claude. And it was triggered by me saying make a graphic. That's one way of doing it. Another way to prompt it or to get the thing to work, I personally like this option better. I do \, and then if you see here, here's all the skills you have within there. And some are a lot, like these are add-ons. These are stuff that like Claude has. Your stuff will be right here at the top, the personal ones that you created at there. So if I want to do, I want post-coaching session, right? So I had a coaching call with the client. I have a very regimented process I follow post-coaching calls when it comes to how I update my HubSpot, how I send the recap email, how I help them create their sales playbooks as well. And so if I want to do this, I would do post-coaching session with from today with my call or from my call with, and then I can put their name like this. I'm gonna hit enter. It'll pop up over here just like that. There's the skills it's using. It's going to go through this. I'm not going to I don't want to show a ton of this just because I fear I might show some of my clients' information. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to get out of it, go back to this and see is it still creating. So it does take a little bit of time too, as I was just talking straight ahead as I wait for this thing to be built, but it's worth it. Like I know it's foolish to say, but I remember I did a workshop like 2 weeks ago and I think someone probably it really takes a long time. The answer is yes. But once it's done, think about it. Every time moving forward, when I want to do a candidate submission, I can just drop it in there, go grab myself a cup of coffee, come back, and the thing will be done as a result from there, which I think is pretty damn cool. Also, by the way, if there is anyone that has questions or things like that, feel free to drop them in like the chat. Ask me right now. I'll try to do my best to answer them as we're talking too. And again, if you're watching the replay, obviously I can't do that, but hopefully. If you do have questions, you feel free or feel encouraged to reach out directly to me. If I can't answer it, I will. I do get a lot of questions every day, though, candidly. So there's only so much I can do as one person. And of course, if you are looking for more in-depth support from a coaching and consulting perspective, we can certainly talk about what that looks like and how I've helped at this point hundreds of recruiters now over the last 3 years. As you see, it's running through all this stuff. I will say this, as Claude is updated, and even now, right? Actually, before I even started this live, this wasn't here because they just made another update to it. As it keeps updating and adding things, I swear some of the stuff it writes is just like bells and whistles. It just makes it look like it's doing a bunch of stuff. This stuff used to not show up as well. It sometimes can take a while to see some of these things. And I think they added this in there just to show that it was still working. As this is continuing to, this brings up another good point I want to talk about because I'm opening up a new task. If you are new to any LLM for that matter, I would recommend or encourage you when you're using, and again, I'm a Claude person, but to make sure you're cognizant of the model you're using. So Fable 5, which is the one that recently came out, it's now got restricted. So Opus 4.8 is the, let's call it the smartest model that's available for us to use. I personally use Sonnet 4.6 more often than not, because it is, as it says there, it is efficient for everyday tasks. And if it is more so research-based, or if it's a consistent routine or process, I just feel like Sonnet does a pretty good job. I almost feel like when you go to Opus, it almost overthinks things, and I always feel like I lead to a little bit more frustration. The other thing, too, to make sure to point about this with the different models, as you move up the chain in terms of the smartest model, the smarter the model, the more token usage that occurs. So you could run out pretty quickly in terms of your usage. If you're on the $20 plan, chances are you'll run out very, very quickly if you're using the Opus model. So if you want to, essentially your tokens go longer from a usage perspective, just go down another model. And you can even select the effort level here as well, which again, as it even says right there, if you are in higher effort, it takes longer, first off, which is probably why it's taking a little bit of a while to create the skill. But secondly, the usage goes up faster. So if I were to set this thing to the max, I would burn through tokens. Even though it's Sonnet, it would still burn through tokens a lot faster than if I had set the effort level down to low. So that's just something to consider as you're using this, because I know early days for me, I burned through my usage pretty quickly. They typically, not typically, I think it's every 5 or 6 hours, they reset your usage. You only get a certain window of usage between the 5 or 6 hour window. And then once you hit it, you're not allowed to use it for another 5 hours or whenever that limit resets itself. And so that's something to consider as well. And if you ever do, and I know I'm doing a lot of talking, and you're probably hey, just show the dang task. It might still be working, which it looks like it is. It's still working. So I'll talk through it as this is finishing up. If you get to the point where you're like me and you've got scheduled tasks like this, I would highly, highly, highly recommend any scheduled recurring task. If it's not mission critical, aka I need to have this information every morning before I start my day. If it's just something look, this is nice to have. For me personally, I have some scheduled tasks to do some account research on things, also to help me create content. I schedule all of those for the weekend. So that way, one, you don't burn through all of your tokens when you need them most, aka during the workday. And two, typically, I think your usage rate is allowed to be a little bit higher on the weekends because there's less people using the models as well. And so that's another reason why I do it on the weekend. But the main reason was like I used to have I thought, hey, let's just schedule tasks every Monday morning. And I'll have all 5 of them scheduled or all 6 or whatever they were. Well, the issue was those are using so many tokens. When I went in to then create a candidate submittal, I was like, oh, you ran out. I'm like, oh, dang it. So just make sure, again, when you're using the scheduled tasks, I would highly recommend they're set up like either Saturday morning or Sunday morning. The only thing you need to know about that is your computer needs to be awake to run these things. So if you want it to execute, you're going to have to go in, turn on your computer, and then it'll pop up in the bottom right, and it'll say, hey, we're running the scheduled task, provided your computer's on and Claude is open. That's kind of the key point there. If you do miss it, which I've had happen before, it's like, oh, my computer wasn't on. Literally the next time you boot up the computer and boot up Claude, it will ping you and say, we're running scheduled tasks. Now, if it's Monday and you're like, oh, I don't want to waste all my tokens, I would just recommend, hey, put a pause to it and then manually trigger it later on once you're done using Claude for that day. So this opened in HTML. This will happen from time to time. And again, it took a while to create this dang thing. It creates the HTML because I didn't have specific cases. So Claude basically says, okay, well, if you don't have specific submittals or examples to use, we're just going to make some things up. So Marcus Webb, Jamie Torres, and Derek Sloan, I mean, maybe they're real people in this world, but they're not anyone I give to Claude. And so ultimately it went in and said, okay, we're just going to make this up and see if we can see how it looks. And so what ultimately it's going to do, and I'm going to bring this back over to our screen so we can all see this. It will show you, okay, if you use this skill, here's what the output looks like. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through every one of these things. Like you could scan through, like, here's what it looks like without the skill. You're like, oh, this is missing some stuff, or I don't like this. Like, okay, cool. I'm just going to say ultimately, like, this looks great. Let's just say everything came out this great. I would just say, hey, looks great. So we'll tell it, hey, look, everything looked great. It should then come back and say, okay, awesome. We'll finalize this now. And here you go. Here's your skill that you can now save and use from now until the end of time, or now until you want to make some updates to it, which again, I said at the start of the call, and I'll say it again. One of the big things where I see it go wrong in every skill, if you're having it create something, there's always going to be a section in there called outputs, which is how you want that information presented back to you. And if there's issues with if it's inconsistent or you don't like it and you need to make a change to the skill, I always recommend go into the skill itself. And once this is pulled up, I'm going to show you what I mean. So here's the skill now created. I'm going to scroll down and show you what it is. So here's the section, the canned snapshot. Like this is breaking down how it should look, why they're looking. This is like the uniformity. It should, when I give it the information, it's not going to recap. It's not going to do this, but then it's in order. It's going to say canned snapshot will be step 1. Career summary would be 2. Key accomplishments. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show an example here. So this is working. I'm going to walk through this, but I want to, hopefully this will do correctly. Like I'm hoping it'll create like a Marcus Webb that showed there. It'll create that, send it back to me, and I can show you how side-by-side comparison. Okay, here's what it says it should do, and here's what ultimately it was created. So I mean, they're like, this is how it should, in order to look like this, this, and this. It's going to take these inputs because that's one of the things we prompted on, the resume, the interview notes, and the job spec. So for you, creating this skill at home for a real job order and a real candidate, when you were to use this skill, if you do / sales recruiter submissions skill, Claude would then ask you, where is the person's resume, where are your intake notes, and interview notes, and where are the job specs. You can then load it in there. What I told one of my clients earlier this week, if you're working on multiple job orders, my recommendation would be on this left-hand side, label things by the job order. So instead of saying candidate submission skill, you might put the honest salesperson / sales recruiter, meaning like that's the role that we're working on. So every time moving forward, I come across a new candidate that I want to submit over to the honest salesperson, I just go into that chat and upload the resume. The reason being is if you were to start a new task or a new chat altogether, or a new task, they call them Cowork, you would then actually have to upload all that information again. You have to upload the resume, the job spec, the intake notes or interview notes as well. So just like a bit of a time-saving issue. Now, if you're a power user, if you're someone like myself, You can set up some G Drive folders and direct Claude there and all that stuff, but that's like a little bit more technical than what I want to talk about today. Today was just a matter of like creating your first skill, being able to use it, and then one like a very easy way to reuse it over and over again. So here you go, Derek Sloan. I'm gonna do this to show in the folder. It creates it there. I'm gonna have to do a few things in a second because it always I have to save it to my computer. It's in like a local. It's like the local files that Claude itself saves. So I'm actually having to open this up, which I'm going to show here in a second. So this is what I created when it was all said and done. So here's Derek Sloan, obviously made up as well. If you remember, I'm going to jump between these two things real quick. I'm going to go back to the skill itself, tone and format the sections in order. So career summary, and here, let me do this just to make it easier here and here. So if this is done, didn't quite, well, we can do this. Close. It's close. Okay, I think we can get an idea here. I mean, again, I'm trying to do both so you can see an example, but here's the career summary. Here's career summary, right? Candidate snapshot, there it is, because that's the output. Here's the career summary right there. As you scroll down, key accomplishments, yep, there it is there. Ultimately, you're scrolling down a little bit more, why they're looking, why he's looking, there it is, great. Lastly, compensation expectations, there it is from there. It added in like the availability, logistics, red flags. Again, if you want that in, you can. That's added. Like, quite frankly, for me, looking at this, one thing I absolutely hate about it is it's not on one page. I hate the fact that it extends over to a second page with this little block. So for me, I would have to go in. I'm going to open this up here like this. I would actually have to go in and re-prompt Claude and say, hey, like I'll do this now. I don't love that Derek's can we make it one page? It's going to try to go through it. Chances are it's going to have to like condense some fonts and things of that nature. Ultimately, what we're really going to have to do, because I just want to show you a quick example of how you can just re-ask it. The problem, though, with this case is, and I'd probably have to run a few more test cases, but from what I know, after working with Claude, what you just saw there with like the 2-pager, that second page being added on, there's a very good chance every other candidate would look the same. And so instead of just prompting back and saying, fixing it, I would actually have to go into the skill, which is the output format here, as you saw. Here's some of the outputs. I would add in here, like, we could do this. We could save the skill, which I'd have to save it afterwards. But we'd actually go into this piece here, the output, and tell Claude, ensure all of this information is on one page. And you might have to add a few more disclaimers in terms of how you want it to look. So it's a lot of trial and error, so you probably can't tell. Like here it is. Yeah, tighten the margins, condense the copy, trim the spacing. So again, it squeezed things down. I might not love how the final output looks. I'm not going to go and jump into it right now, but I would actually have to go into the skill itself and make sure this part here, the output format, and even up here too, added in there as well, is down to one page. And ultimately, it might be like, hey, I have to get rid of things like this section. Like that, this is where that trial and error, and sometimes the frustration can come from when creating skills, because it's not always going to be right. It's not always going to be your liking the first time. But if you iterate and go back and forth over time, eventually you're going to create a skill that can replicate your work over and over again. So lastly with this though, because it's not saved, we would do this. This saves it just like that. We're going to hit manage here, and there it is, right? It's already been saved in there. Here's the skill like that. I'm going to close this out real quick. You can do this, and then here's the edit button I wanted to show. So what I was talking about now is you scroll down, output format, validate after generating, sure. I would do this, I'd save it, and once that's done, it's just obviously saved, it says up there. I would then be able to go back, and just like to bring things full circle. I do this, sales, recruiter submission. Unfortunately, because it is made up, they're not going to be remember this Derek individual. I would do this, though, on my candidate, Keely. This should, as you're going to see this now in action, we created the dang skill, and now we're putting it to work. It should, if it's doing it correctly, it's going to be prompted to ask me a few questions because, again, as you see here, there is no resume, there's no interview notes, and there's no job spec. That was a requirement over here on the right-hand side. As we scroll down, those are some of the things that it wanted to have. So this is how I prompted it, aka packages candidate, submit this person, do a write-up. I use the backslash. I personally like that, but you could just type in, do a write-up for Keely, it would have the same result. But it is also missing, again, it's missing those inputs that we required, which are right here, how to use your inputs. if there's things you want to add in there, maybe you would say, hey, instead of just resume, interview notes, and job spec, I record all of my rec intake calls. I want to make sure that that information is part of the candidate submission package. So I would then go back to the creation. I would go into this input section and I would add that into there as well. I will say with that, like once you start bringing in multiple sources of information, resume, interview notes, the job spec, the rec intake call, you're better off at that point, candidly, creating a connector with your G Drive and putting everything into defined folders by job order, and then having Claude go into those folders to extract that information. Because once you start to like add multiple sources, it just becomes a lot to like find them, drag them, add them in there. I just feel like it's kind of a lot of work. You're better off, and this is more technical, but I just want to talk about it just for a brief moment. You're just better off housing everything in a particular spot. For me, I use Google Drive, so my G Drive folders. I put a lot of things into particular folders based on the call transcripts. And then I can just point Claude and say, hey, I'm doing a sales recruiter submission / on my candidate Keely for X client. It can then go in, find the client, find all that information that's been saved in there. Again, the job spec, the rec intake, maybe your own notes, whatever it is, it's all in there. Claude can then gather all the inputs like that without actually having you paste them in there, attach them, and then simply execute on the skill itself. So if we were to go back to, just to make my point, case in point here, right? So this is like someone like a skill wise, right? So we met with today, created all these things. It created all these emails, things like this. I didn't do any of this. Like I created this skill where all this stuff is housed in a particular spot. It can then go in, find this stuff, and ultimately create my recap email, create the BD process, create all this stuff is created with the help of Claude. But that's because of the connectors and everything else I set up. Again, very much more technical than probably I even imagined getting into, but I just wanted to make sure I at least spent a minute or two kind of talking about that, because you don't want the work level to creep up so high. You have to constantly reattach and all that stuff. So again, just to put a bow on it, if you have multiple sources of information, I would recommend setting up a folder that Claude has access to, and it can go in and find that information, pull it from there, and then execute on those tasks. So well, that's it. I mean, that's kind of, we created our first skill. You saw it from, beginning to end, like going back to here would probably be a good example. As you saw here, I had a prompt that I created, and just like a recap, right? Prompted to start. I then filled in all the information from here. It then went in, created said skill itself. We saw the output. We didn't necessarily love it. We then were able to go in, edit the skill, make some tweaks, and then ultimately we get to the point where this thing is good to go. So that way, each time moving forward now, we would then be able to just do, like I said, / do the skill itself, or just, again, I want to do a submittal. And just that will prompt Claude to go in and execute on those tasks, aka the skills that we created as well. So hopefully this is really helpful. If you got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, feel free to check out the replay that I'll be putting up on YouTube. And again, I apologize lastly about the task, the skill itself, or the prompt itself, excuse me. I thought I was able to drop it right into the LinkedIn chat, and you'll be able to grab it and walk through it yourself. So I do apologize. That is kind of a key part for you that you weren't able to do if you came prepared. But hopefully you're able to see it's really not that intimidating when it's all said and done. Shoot me a DM if you want that, and then you'll be able to create the skill package from there. So thanks so much for joining on a Thursday afternoon. Hope this was helpful for you. And lastly, again, if you're watching this replay, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And lastly, if you are in the market, if you're looking for ways to improve your BD, your sales processes, and want to sprinkle in AI with some of the things that I've created and show my other clients, please reach out to me directly, as I'm taking on one-on-one clients still at this point. Got one spot open. Would love to help you have an amazing second half of the year, because I know with some of my clients that started working with me, it's been a rough first 6 months of the year, and we'll be able to start turning things around from a sales and a process perspective. And then you sprinkle in the AI, the kind of trifecta piece that I feel like I bring to the table. I've been able to not only help my clients win new clients themselves and win more money, I've also been able to get them time back in their day from an AI perspective to save them time and get back to doing what they love, which is having conversations with candidates, prospects, and clients, because that's how you drive business in this industry. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.